Thanks again, everyone, for coming to this Friday's Daily Digital Micro webinar. The topic today is going to be looking at useful keyboard shortcuts and the differences between shortcuts on the Mac and the Windows platforms. So we're not going to cover absolutely every keyboard shortcut because we don't have that much time, but hopefully this will give you some interesting and some useful keyboard shortcuts that will hopefully you'll find useful in your day-to-day life. So to begin with, let's have a look at the differences between shortcuts on a Windows machine versus a Mac machine. They're quite similar. The general Windows setup, in the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard, you'll have the Control key, your Windows key, which looks like the Windows logo, and the Alt key. The Mac keyboard setup is usually on the bottom left-hand corner. You'll have the Control key, what's called the Option key, and then the Command key. There's a lot of shared functionality between them, but they do operate a little differently as well. So we'll have a look at those here. So Control versus Command. One thing to remember when you're using a Mac versus a Windows machine is that the Control key on the Mac is not the same as the Control key on the Windows machines. On most Windows machines, the Control key will be the main key that you'll use to instigate shortcuts, whereas on the Mac it'll be the Command key. So on your Mac, your Command key is going to be the actual equivalent of that Control key. And you'll find that a lot of the keyboard shortcuts we look at will be very similar. It's literally just swapping out the Command key for the Control key in most cases. The Command key on on most official Apple keyboards will be this sort of little infinity type symbol. But you'll notice on a lot of third-party keyboards, it'll just be marked as Command. It won't have that little graphic. So just try and remember, if you're using an Apple machine, it'll likely have that little tiny graphic on there. But most of the keyboards will just be, it'll just state Command. Another difference we've got then is the Alt key and the Option keys. So on Windows machines, the Alt key is mostly used to access like menus in Windows programs as a way of quickly skipping between menus rather than clicking on them. But on the Mac, the Alt key doesn't quite do the same sort of thing. The Mac's version of Alt, which is usually called the Option key, but it's sometimes on some keyboards will also be called Alt. That is more generally used to trigger more obscure functions that activate special characters, like characters with accents over the top of them and that sort of thing. So using the Alt key on the Mac, generally speaking, wouldn't be the same as the Alt key on a Windows keyboard. You'll also find as well on Apple-produced keyboards, the Option key has it looks like a little sort of jaggedy symbol, which I don't know the name of, I'm afraid. So again, that's another to look out for. When it's got a little graphic element to it, that's also the same as the Option key. So let's have a look now at some actual keyboard shortcuts in action. Let me just stop presenting my slideshow here and show you instead my main cluttered screen. Now this is cluttered for a reason. Okay. So the first keyboard shortcut I want to show you guys. These ones are initially some general use sort of Windows shortcuts. So if you're using a Windows machine and or if you're using a Mac, I should say, but you're using like a partitioned Mac that's got Windows installed, your Mac keyboard won't have the Windows key on that specific keyboard. So if you hit the Windows key on your keyboard, that'll open up the Start menu. Now, of course, on a Mac keyboard, you wouldn't have this. So if you want to use a Windows button on a keyboard where you don't have a Windows button, simply press Control and Escape. So Control and Escape, which I'm pressing now, will also open the Windows menu. So even if you're on a Mac or a Linux machine that's been petitioned to use Windows, without a Windows key, Control and Escape will pop that open. If you've got a particularly cluttered window like mine here and you want to scoot between all the different programs, you can also press you can also press the Alt key and Tab. And Alt and Tab together, if you hold them down, will pop open this window, which will then show you what's currently open on your machine. Now, at the moment, I've got the Alt key held down to keep this open. And if you press the Tab button repeatedly, you can actually tab through all the different programs until you land on the one that you actually want to remain open. So that's quite useful. Sometimes if you want to close a window quickly, you can hit Alt and F4. So for example, this calculator I've got open here, I could just press Alt and F4 and I'll close it straight away. So that's a really good way of closing out programs quite quickly there. And if you're leaving your machine unattended for a while, you can also press the Windows key and L. That will lock your machine. I'm not going to do that right now, obviously, because I don't want to end this particular meeting. But Windows and L will lock your machine. So that's quite handy if you're going to be away from your desk for a while, especially if you're on campus. In a similar kind of vein, Windows and D will hide all the open windows on your machine. So if I press Windows and D now, you can see it actually clears my desktop. And I can see exactly, well, nothing at all, which is quite useful sometimes. If I press Windows and D again, it should bring everything back. Let's just hit the taskbar on this occasion. Okay, let me bring back the various things. Okay. Within browsers directly, you've also got some other options. If you're in a browser and you've accidentally closed a tab, so for example, if I close this tab here, you can either close the tab by clicking X, or you can press Control and W, and that'll close a tab. And if you want to get a tab that's been accidentally closed to come back quickly, you can press Shift, Control, and T, and that'll reopen the tab exactly where it was. So that can be quite a useful function as well. Other quick useful shortcuts within Word itself. You probably all know the shortcuts for copying and pasting. So that's obviously Control and C and Control and V. So I'm not going to go through those. But a quick shortcut that might be handy in Word, or also in PowerPoint or similar word processing documents, programs rather, is you can press the Control key and the arrow keys to skip between words and paragraphs. So for example, in this paragraph here, if I press Control and the right arrow key, I can scoot across to the beginning of each word. If I press Control and left, I can scoot backwards to the start of each word that way. And if you use the Control button with the up and down arrows, Control and down will jump to the end of each paragraph. And then Control and up will, of course, go back up to the start of each paragraph. So that's quite handy if you're navigating through Word documents. And then finally, some other quick handy shortcuts are if you're looking to, for example, take a screenshot of your screen. On Windows keyboards, you've got the print screen button, which is just sort of off to the top right of your delete key. But the print screen will just take a screenshot of the entire desktop, and you can then paste that into a Word document or PowerPoint or anything else. You can also, if you want to take a screenshot of a specific window rather than the entire screen, whatever window you've got active, so for example, this Word document here, if I hold down the Alt key and press print screen, that'll take a picture of just that open window. And a really good way of taking specific screenshots of things is by holding down the Windows key and the Shift key and S. So Windows, Shift and S will actually darken your screen, and then you can drag a box across a specific area that you want to take a picture of. So you can do that, and that'll copy that to the clipboard, and then you can add that into whatever document you're working on. And one last thing I'll show you, which I find useful, particularly specifically in browsers, is zooming in and zooming out. My eyesight's terrible, so it's quite handy if you hit the Control key and the plus and minus buttons. That will let you either zoom out or zoom in as much as you want to on most browsers, and you can press Control and 0 to reset the view back to its default. So that's a really handy way of navigating between these things there. So that's just a quick run through of some useful Windows and Mac shortcuts there. I will put a cheat sheet available for you guys as well, which you can download, which will have these shortcuts on there for the Mac and the PC versions. But that'll be the end of this particular daily digital webinar. So I'll stop the recording on this particular section. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions or anything that I need to elaborate on or go over?